Narayanam Namaskritam Naram Jaivadanottamam Devim Sarasatim Vyasam Tato Jayodiret Nashtapriyashu Badreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevya Bhagavati Tamashaki Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki Nigama Kapaturu Garitam Param Shukamakaramitta Dravisamitam Pibata Bhagavatam Rashamariyam Mahoro Sika Bhuvi Bhavgam Krishna Swadama Bhagate Damagini Karunashta Dvishamasha Paranako Dunoditaham Twamapu Apiyadabhishuta Bishutam Vibhu Samapyanana Virambiriksaram Prakyayidur Maram Sankleshana Nirvana Musanti Nanyataham Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dino Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radhikanta Namostute Jayatam Surito Pango Mamadir Matirgati Matsavashapadam Boja Radhana Madana Mohanam Sriman Rasarasaram Bibam Sipana Karsan Bener Shinurpago Gopinata Sriya Sinamam Divyad Brindaranya Kapadumada Srimad Radnagara Shima Shanishto Sri Sri Radha Shira Govana Prestadavihi Sevamana Shmarami Namo Brahmanya Devaya Go Brahmanya Taya Jagaritaya Krishnaya Govindaya Namo Namaha Mangalam Bhagavan Gushnu Mangalam Gudhajaja Mangalam Pari Kaksho Mangarayatano Hari Om Narayanaya Vidmahi Vasudevaya Dhimahi Tano Vishnu Prachodhyate Om Mahadevi Chavidmahi Vishnu Patniti Dhimahi Tano Lakshmi Prachodhyate Mahalakshmi Namastubhyam Sare Sri Hari Pare Namastubhyam Namastyam Tapti Kanchana Goringi Radhe Vindavaneshwari Vishwavanusute Devi Pranamani Hari Priya Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pistaya Bhutare Shri Mati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharini Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Praskadadesana Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sri Gaur Bhaktabindam Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Thank you, Jean and Govinda Dev for joining me. I think Rob was in Denver. Sent us some nice pictures of the Denver Sunday feast. I think he's in Denver for some business conference of his, so I'm not sure if he'll be jumping on board. Thank you also, Brent, for joining us. This is our 13th segment to discuss the pastimes of Gajendra and the crocodile who latched onto his leg. At the time we ended last week, we were reviewing a prayer that Gajendra was sending skyward to the effect, Lord, please destroy that which is not destroyed by time. What is it that's not destroyed by time? Everything, the best clothes, the best buildings, no matter how much you go to the gym, fine-tune your body, eventually. I remember there was one man, he was a political science teacher at BYU. I forget whether he was retired or not. We used to know his son, Jared. Jared and his friends used to come to the Sunday feast when we used to have him in the log building many, many years. Jared went on to join the military and become a helicopter pilot. And then after discharge from the military, flies helicopters professionally, I believe. And his father was as well as a teacher at BYU. He was a bodybuilder. You'd always see him at the gym. And I think the last time I saw him, he was 68, 69, 70 and ripped. I mean, whew, you won't find too many 70-year-olds on the planet that look better than him. And I don't know exactly what happened to him, but I know he's not there anymore. Many people pass away because of neglect of their bodies. They'll pass away in the late 30s, 40s, 50s. And here's a man who not only did he not pass away in the early or even mid stages of his life, but having outlived many of his contemporaries, he still has a great body. I remember I used to sell cookies in Las Vegas, and there was a health club there, and I used to go there for a shower and a workout before a long day of selling cookies in front of Kmart's and Walmart's. It was called the Las Vegas Health Club or something. I remember it was on Karen Street. And the man who had founded that particular club, they had two pictures of him on the wall going back and forth between the gym and this shower room. And he was lying down. He was he just had a very brief swimsuit on. and he's kind of lying horizontally with his arm like that, and he's, he's flexing his abs and everything. And I had a picture of him at 19, and I had a picture of him at 75. And I swear he looked, at 19, he was ripped. I mean, he was an athlete. You could see he already had a lot of training, a lot of weight resistance, a lot of aerobics, cardio. He'd already done a lot of that in his teenage years. And so he was about as good looking as a 19-year-old as you could imagine. But what was stunning, and I still remember this so many years later, is he looked better in his 70s than he looked at 19. So my point is not to mislead you into thinking that you can just perpetuate your life in this material body, and certainly not to mislead you into thinking that it gets better and better and better. What I'm describing is just keeping your finger in the dam. That's all. We go through birth, growth, duration, reproduction, dwindling, and vanishing. So some of us go through that cycle pretty quick if we don't take care. We'll go through birth, growth, duration, reproduction, and vanishing in 35 years. If we eat potato chips and sit in front of the TV all day long, gaze at the computer screen and scroll on our cell phone, we'll rip through those 6 phases in like 30 years. So what I'm describing is not any way to get an exemption from those 6 changes, but to extend them as far as you can. If you can go through birth, growth, duration, reproduction, dwindling, and vanishing over 100 years, then you've had a good time span. You've enjoyed that time span on the best level, a qualitative level that you could. You've invested your time and your energy in such a way as to maintain your body and keep at a distance, as long as it's humanly possible, the ravages of old age, disease, and death. But doesn't matter how fit you are, doesn't matter how good of a genes you have, how high level your nutrition is, you will inevitably dwindle and vanish, as opposed to the average person who dwindles and vanishes at the most in their late 60s. You may not dwindle and vanish until your late 70s. In fact, I went to Calgary. Bharat Atmaram invited me to Calgary in June 17th for the Festival of Colors. And I stayed with a devotee there named Gopal Saini. And Gopal's child went to a tutorial, sort of a storefront tutorial place where they studied math. And we went to pick her up and her friend. And then we met the grandfather of her friend, who was ex-military from India. And he was 83. And I swear he exuded good health. I mean, he had been in the military, he had that upright carriage, he had a firm handshake, he had a strong jawline, he had not an ounce of fat on him. You just felt power from him, and he was in his 80s. But in spite of all of that, everything in this material world is corrosive. It will be corroded, and that is the rub. You may think, like Gajendra, everything's good. You've got a good body, you've got good power, good influence, good wives, good children, you've got a good residence. Later on, we'll discuss how the first 19 verses in the first chapter of the 8th canto simply describe the place where Gajendra lived in the Trikuta mountain range. It describes it, goes on and on and on, the flora and the fauna, the beauty of the place of habitation of Gajendra is breathtaking. It's actually the whole pastime took place not on earth, but it took place in the heavenly planets. And yet, no matter how much of a hedge you create, no matter how much of a delaying action you mount, or how long you stretch out your time here in this material world, the unarguable fact of the matter is that we're going to get kicked out unceremoniously. We cannot stay here. We make all these elaborate arrangements. We pin all of our hopes on dull, dead matter, which will always betray us. The rug will always be pulled out from under us sooner or later. And Gajendra, it's a matter of later. And fit bodybuilders and all, it's a matter of later, but it will eventually come. Even Lord Brahma, who lives for about 311 trillion years, even he cannot maintain his physical life forever. He himself has to die. Prabhupada said over and over again, this material world is certified. Whenever we hear something certified, usually it means some authority, isn't it? This motel is certified by the Board of Motels. This physician is certified by the Physicians Medical Association. This attorney is certified by the bar. Usually when we use the word certified, it means there's a higher authority who has given the nod, who has approved, certified someone to practice in a certain way. So none other than the Supreme Personality of God, the ultimate authority, who knows everything about this world, past, present, and future, by virtue of the fact that he created it and entered into it as the Paramatma. Prabhupada says, this material world is certified by the creator, by the destroyer, by the maintainer, by he who is all pervasive throughout this material world and who is resident within each atom and everyone's heart. It is certified as a place of misery where repeated birth and death take place. That's not to say that in the course of your life, you can't carve out for yourself a period, a season of relative happiness. But relative happiness is not real happiness. Real happiness is unending. Real happiness is eternal. We are eternal. And so temporary happiness will never satisfy the soul. There's a few poems that I could share with you to now about the temporality of this material world. One of them is by Shelley. I was talking with Guru Garanga, an old friend of mine, recently on the phone. He's an attorney also. He lives in Alachua. He started the Swiss Yatra, and he's a Yale graduate and has a wonderful vocabulary. I love just hearing him speak. I love his choice of words. And so I forget what we're talking about, but just out of the blue, he said, do you know the poem Ozymandias? And I thought I'd misheard. I mean, who brings up a topic like that in a normal conversation? And then I remembered who I'm talking to, the highly educated, highly intelligent, highly articulated Guru Grung. And I said, say what? He says, do you know the poem Ozymandias? So I think he was impressed, if I'm not mistaken, when I said, yeah. I met a traveler from an antique land. I just came out with this on the phone. I met a traveler from an antique land who said, too fast and trunkless, legs of stone stand half sunk in the desert. Beside them a shattered visage lies who sneer, and wrinkled lip and frown of cold command. Tell that well the sculpture, those passions red which yet survive, stamped on those lifeless things, the hand that mocked them and the heart that fed. And on the pedestal, these words appear. My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair. Nothing beside remains. Round the decay of that colossal wreck, boundless and bare, the lone and level sands stretch far away. Getting the point, getting the picture that everything has a point of beginning, a point of middle point, and a point of end. Another poem by an anonymous author goes like this. Once in India reigned a king who upon his signet ring engraved a maxim true and wise, which if held before the eyes, gave him counsel at a glance, fit for any change and chance, solemn words, and these were they, even this will pass away. Trains of camels through the sands, fleets of galleys through the sea. Trains of camels through the sands brought him gems from Samarkand. Fleets of galleys through the seas brought him pearls to match with these. But he counted not his gain, treasures of the mine and main. What is wealth, the king would say, even this will pass away. In the revels of the court at the zenith of the sport, when the palms of all his guests burned with clapping at his chest, said the king amid his figs and wine, O loving friends of mine, pleasure comes but not to stay. Even this will pass away. You can join me on the chorus, if you like. Fairest lady ever seen, he made his bride and crowned his queen. Pillowed on the marriage bed, whispering to his soul, he said, bridegroom never pressed fairer bosom to his breast, but mortal flesh will come to clay. Yes, even this will pass away. Fighting on a furious field, once a javelin pierced his shield. Soldiers with a loud lament bore him bleeding to his tent, groaning from his tortured side. Pain is hard to bear, he cried, but with patience, day by day, you guessed it, even this will pass away. Struck, towering in the public square, 20 cubits in the air, stood his statue carved in stone. Then the king, disguised unknown, stood before his sculptured name, musing meekly what is fame. Fame is but a slow decay, even this will pass away. Struck with palsy, wise and old, waiting in the gates of gold, said the king with his dying breath, life is done, but what is death? And then answered to the king, fell a sunbeam on his ring, showing by a heavenly ray, even this will pass away. So that's quite elaborate support in connection with Gajendra's prayer. Lord, please destroy that which is not destroyed by time. So what is it that's not destroyed by time? We pretty much elaborately explain that everything is destroyed by time. Oppenheimer is the movie that's the rage now, as I've several times mentioned. And when he saw the atomic bomb come up, he quoted Krishna from the Bible, Karoshmi loga seakrira, loga samaritaram. Time I am, Krishna says, and I've come to destroy all the world. So when Krishna says he is time, when the absolute is time, and in his feature is time, he claims to destroy all the worlds. We have no reason to doubt that. But yet there is an exception. There is something which is not necessarily destroyed by time, and that is ignorance. It is ignorance. What's the proof? How we have been revolving in the cycle of birth and death for hundreds, if not thousands, if not tens of thousands, if not millions of previous incarnations. We have identified with this body over and over and over again throughout multiple incarnations. In none of them have we achieved any measure of satisfaction or happiness. In fact, it's the very dissatisfaction which comes from misidentifying with this body that causes you to have unfulfilled desires at the end of one lifetime, and then to take birth in another body after the expiration of one particular body. It is the firm hold of ignorance on ourselves that causes us to reincarnate over and over and over again. If we were not suffering from ignorance, we would not accept these bodies made of dark, dull, dead matter. We would go as beings of light. We would reconstitute ourselves in the world of light. So the fact that we've been here for so long indicates that ignorance is not necessarily destroyed by time. People sometimes say to us, hopefully, perhaps we've described the law of karma, the function of cause and effect, action and reaction. And people will say, well, surely we don't come back forever. Surely there's a point at which we get off the cycle of reincarnation and go back home, back to Godhead. And we say, yes, Krishna wants that. God wants you to come to that point. And he's in your heart. He's willing to give light and guidance and direction once you express an interest. But it's theoretically possible that that never happens, because ignorance is not destroyed by time. So no matter how much time you spend in material bodies, incarcerated material bodies, no matter how many times you reincarnate, it's not a given. There's nothing within the experiences contained within samsara, which in itself delivers you out of the ocean of nescience onto the shore of knowledge and reality. The whole material world is so designed to delude us. Devi yashugunami matam mayadara mame bempara. The world is so dazzling, so enchanting that even great sages mistake this world for reality. It is the energies of the Lord. And the Lord is enchanting. The Lord is bewildering. The Lord can easily delude living beings. And this is his energy. So there's nothing about mucking around in this material world which will, in and of itself, bring us to the shore, deliver us from this ocean of birth and death. But sometimes it happens. The example is given, I think it's by a Caru, that sticks and bits of cotton and bits of wood, they may be in the current of a powerful river. And caught in that current of the river, they have no power in and of themselves to get out of that current. They're completely at the mercy of that current. There's nothing they can do. There's no circumstance. There's no intervention per se. They're just doomed to be playthings in the hands of this powerful flowing current of the river. But sometimes it is stated that the current itself will take them to shore, and they'll get hung up on some driftwood or mangroves, and they'll make it to shore, some or other. Normally that would not happen, but every once in a while, that very current, which keeps them trapped in the middle of the river, that very current can sometimes deliver them onto the seashore. But for the most part, we're like little bits of straw and dust and cotton caught in the current of time. There's nothing about our circumstances which would lend itself to hopefulness. And to be hopeful, you'd have to know who you are and what the purpose of life is and the goal is. And most people are not. They're not blessed with transcendental knowledge. Their hope is for the next energy drink. Their hope is for the next episode of Seinfeld. Their hope is for the paycheck at the end of the week. Their hope is for a 2-week vacation in Hawaii once every 5 years. Their hopes are pinned on temporary stuff, things which are ultimately going to disappoint them. So ignorance itself has such a hold on the living beings that there's nothing about the material circumstance which is going to bring us to the shore of deliverance. Therefore, in answer to your question, but we will end up getting off the cycle of birth and going back to home, back to God. And the answer is, well, probably, but it is possible that you never do it. It is possible that you simply remain here forever, accepting the status quo. It says, not knowing our true nature, we cater this temporary stuff, but it's never enough. You have free will to make your own decisions, but you have to face your actions the way you've been living. Sense enjoyment is fleeting and shabby. We do it over and over, and it never makes us happy. Who was it? Einstein said, the great illusion is that by repeating the same actions of the past, we will get a different result. No, you do the same things, you get the same results. If you try for sense enjoyment, you end up birth, death, disease, and old age over and over and over and over again. So Krishna loves us so much that sometimes problems come into our life, even when we're comfortable, even when we've achieved a little bit of a niche in the onslaught of material nature, we've got a good family, good job, good house. Sometimes Krishna jeopardizes that secure, comfortable situation, knowing that it's going to be dissolved sooner or later. Krishna brings challenges, brings reverses, brings enemies into our lives in order to get us back on the way to Krishna, in order to disabuse ourselves of the ignorance of association with material nature. And sometimes these problems show us the way to Krishna, and other times the problems themselves become the way of Krishna. And we can become Krishna conscious at any time due to our own volition, due to awakening, as it were, from a slumber of ignorance. And yet that rarely happens. We don't see that happening. Matir na Krishna parato shataro mito vibat adanta gopri vidam punapanashchepatichepana. Prahlad Maharaj says, Matir na Krishna paratovana. Although we have everything we need to become Krishna conscious, Matir means higher conscious, Krishna conscious. Mato Mato Matirbinam. He says, most of us do not take advantage. We do not take advantage of the messages that the Lord sends us from within the heart. We do not take advantage of scriptures, which are there to show us the way back to home, back to Godhead. We do not take advantage of saints who Krishna sends our way. And rather, we prefer to chew that which is already chewed. We've enjoyed in past lives illicit sex, gambling, intoxication, meat eating. Who knows how many past lives we've eaten flesh, we've gotten juiced, we've gotten boozed, we've chased women and vice versa. We've eaten meat. We've done all these things countless times in the past, and yet we continue to try to squeeze happiness out of these material activities. And that's compared to chewing that which is already chewed. Sugar cane is very sweet. If you happen to get a piece of sugar cane, you can chew it and extract sweetness from it. But once all the sweetness is extracted, you just throw that sugar cane to the side of the road. There's no more juice in it. Now, if someone else comes along, sees that sugar cane, they, oh, sugar cane, they pick it up and they try to chew it and get juice out of it, it will be a wasted effort because the juice has already been extracted. Similarly, people will not become Krishna conscious. They are committed that even though they've failed countless times in the past, even though the juice has already been extracted from this material world, they will repeatedly look for discarded pieces of sugar cane along the way. They will repeatedly go back to the process of chewing the chewed and not care for enlightening themselves with transcendental knowledge. So sometimes Krishna intervenes due to his causeless mercy and sends a problem our way. And that problem jars us. It dislodges us from our preset patterns of behavior. And in that moment of crisis, in that life or death situation, we think again of that Lord whom we left behind long, long ago. So the problem is sent our way by our loving Father in order to force us to take shelter much more intensely than we would had our nice, comfortable situation gone on indefinitely. And in this moment, one remembers that my nature is as a devotional servant of Krishna. I have neglected my devotional service and left myself open and vulnerable to the waves of Maya, the result of which is that I got myself in this terrible, terrible situation. At that moment, Brahmanda Brahmite Kono Bhagavana Jiva Guru Krishna Pashade Pai Bhakta Lotavish. One revives the Krishna consciousness of one's previous life and considers resuming the devotional service which one interrupted a long time ago. So the way of transcendence is to transfer our tendency for activity, our tendency for service from the temporary things of this material world back to the eternal service of the Lord. Now, there's one pitfall. I personally struggle with this every single day. That when we're building temples and maintaining temples and organizing festivals, and giving talks, cooking prasadam, receiving guests and visitors, and maintaining a property which is visited as this one is by thousands of people a year, you know, it's a kind of an insidious attitude, but you are tempted to think of yourself as the doer, that I'm doing all this for Krishna. And we're told also, comments on Facebook always say, Caru and Bhai Prabhupada must be so happy by your service. And it's good to do service for Krishna. And we're very fortunate that Krishna has given us a green light on practically everything that we've attempted here in Utah. It's astounding to think that we came to Utah with no money, no resources, and to look at what has sprouted up over the years. But the temptation is to think this is because of my talent, my ability, my fundraising, my lectures, by Bobby's expertise, and so on and so forth. So that mentality is now going to keep you separate from Krishna, even though you're doing Krishna's service. You're right in the middle of devotional service, and that's good. But still, the sense of doership is going to be a stumbling block. Prakrite kriyamani gunai karma hankara vimaram kartami tirimere. We are Prakriti. We are controlled. And Krishna is Purusha. He's the controller. Prakriti gunai karma sarvasha. Most of us outside of Krishna consciousness are under the modes of material nature. But even when we come under Krishna, even when Krishna blesses us and guides us and gives us success in our missionary endeavors, there's still the temptation on our part to think of ourselves as deserving some of the credit for those successes. So it's very good to revive your Krishna consciousness. It's very good to do service to Krishna. You can't even calculate how many spirit souls, not only human, but animal, insect, aquatic, birds of the air, have some or other gotten some punya, gotten some redirection in their lives from this temple property. It has positively affected, thousands of human beings. Who knows how many millions of subhuman beings. But at the same time, even while we're bringing people closer to Krishna, the attitude of, I am a great speaker, I'm a great musician, I'm a great architect, I'm a great cook, I'm a great fun, that attitude of doership can keep us a distance from Krishna. While we're bringing others closer to Krishna, we are distancing ourselves from Krishna because we're not relinquishing the sense of doership. The problem is that devotional service is not in the end about getting things done, but it's about getting Krishna into our hearts. And so to the extent we have that sense of doership, that keeps us a distance from Krishna, even while we are decreasing that distance for others. This is not to say we should stop doing things, not at all. We need to keep doing things because the doing of Krishna consciousness is purificatory, and Krishna will take charge. Krishna will throw a curveball at you. He'll put a bump in the road. So everything doesn't necessarily always come so easily. And we have to, at certain points, relinquish our sense of false ego and realize that without Krishna's help, I am simply not going to get to the other side of this problem. So it's not that we're ever advised to, it's not that because I think I'm the doer that I should stop doing. That's not the solution. We should continue to do, continue to trust Krishna. And when people say, Charu, Vaibhav, you've done so good, we immediately deflect that to Krishna. We say, thank you very much for your praise. I appreciate that. Krishna has been kind on us. Krishna has blessed us, but really we don't deserve the credit. If we deserve any credit, it is simply that Krishna took us by the back of the neck and he shoved us here and there. And he literally forced us to do the right things in order to get a tangible, quantifiable, visible result. And so the trick is the expertise which the devotee has to possess, like a juggler. Juggler has balls in the air, and no matter how many balls in the air, he always catches one, throws one, catches one, throws one, and he never drops the ball. So we have to learn to be jugglers in a sense as devotees. We have to balance doing things, continue to be active in Krishna consciousness, but we have to train ourselves to be in a consciousness of not being the doer, to do things and simultaneously realize that we're not the doers. This is the beauty of the Gajendra pastime. Gajendra had it all. I mean, he was the king of elephants. Gajendra, Gaja means elephant and Endra means king. That means he had defeated a lot of other elements. That means he was very expert in fighting. He defeated all the other bull elephants and achieved the kingship, the sovereignty of all the elephants. He lived in the heavenly planets. He didn't even live in a good place on earth. He lived in the Trikuta mountain region in the heavenly planets. And we can only imagine his wives were the most beautiful amongst the female elephants, and his kids were the best looking. He knew how to get things done. He was a king, he was a patriarch, he was a husband, He was good looking. He was wealth. He knew all about doing things. But at the time the crocodile latched onto his leg, he thought of himself as the doer. Now, Krishna expertly chose this moment when the elephant, who is invulnerable on the land, happened to be sporting in the water. At least we know that Gajendra's back legs may have been on terra firma, but at least his front legs were in the water. And that put him at a disadvantage. This is all by Krishna's arrangement. The crocodile is strong in the water. The elephant is strong in the land. So when the elephant was half on the land and half in the water, the crocodile caught him. And naturally, the crocodile is pulling him in the direction of the water. Gajendra is resisting. This tug of war goes on day after day after day. Gradually, Gajendra gets weakened. The crocodile succeeds in bringing him inch by inch by inch into the water. And what he's doing is inch by inch by inch, metaphorically, analogously speaking, inch by inch by inch, day by day by day, as Gajendra's physical strength ebbs, his spiritual knowledge increases. As his physical wealth, influence, bodily beauty, and security diminish, his transcendental knowledge waxes or wanes. This often happens as the body goes down, the spirit goes up. And that's exactly the dynamic we're seeing here. In our own lives, we all meet people who oppose us bitterly. They oppose us bitterly. It wasn't enough for the crocodile to just leave Gajendra alone. Presumably this crocodile, he himself was the king in the water. He had wives. He had a wonderful situation. He could have just said, let's let bygones be bygones. Gajendra's got everything he wants in the land. I've got everything I want in the water. Why should I attack him? What the crocodile is doing is jeopardizing his ideal situation in the water by trying for too much, by overstretching himself. And in the end, he does get killed. So why not have detente? That would be the intelligent, balanced position of the crocodile. The answer is that Krishna wanted to show mercy on his devotee, Gajendra, who had been active in devotional service in a previous life. So Krishna caused the crocodile to do something illogical and uncharacteristic. In the normal course of affairs, the crocodile would have never been so bold and pretentious as to try to bring down an elephant. But it was the urgings of Krishna from within the heart of the crocodile to oppose Gajendra for no real good reason. There's no real logic. The crocodile would have had everything he needed to eat in the water. So logically speaking, from a normal, rational, natural point of view, this confrontation should have never occurred. And yet in our own lives, we've all experienced people who just don't like us. We don't know why they don't like us. They just don't like the way you walk. They don't like your eyes. They don't like your hair. They don't like your skin color. They just don't like you. You can do everything to try to make them like you, to prove to them that you're a person of note, and they will just never, ever like you. There are people like that in our lives. The Pandavas had Duryodhana. Pandavas weren't inimical to Duryodhana. They actually, for the most part, bent over backward trying to satisfy Duryodhana. But Duryodhana was intractable. He would not rest until the world was rid of the Pandavas. And similarly, the crocodile had no good reason to attack the elephant. But we all have these inexplicable situations where people come against us. And we can ask till the cows come home, or do the crocodiles go back there, why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? And we think, if this one person would just give up their inimical behavior, my whole life would be much nicer. You know, why is this person going out of their way to torment and torture me? What do they get out of it? What's the logic? What's the rationale behind it? And we don't even know. But we do know there are people like that in our lives. And the reason for that is that Krishna sends us enemies and oppositions so that we will have to rely upon him more. We're all inexplicable and inextricably tied up in others' karma. It's like one prisoner in the prison house, his karma is tied up with all the other prisoners. He has to watch his behavior. He has to be very careful how he comports himself. If he looks too daringly and too boldly and too long in the eyes of the wrong person, he'll get attacked in the shower. He'll get a knife in his kidneys. One has to be intensely aware of how it is that in this material world, we are all affected by each other's karma. Sometimes we're driving in our car and through no fault of ourselves, someone perceives that we've made an offense and they start swearing at us, giving the finger, and even driving aggressively to run us off the side of the road. You know, that's how that sometimes our karma we become sucked into the bad mood, the negative karma of somebody else. This is inevitable in this material world. You want to get an inoculation, you want to get a vaccination against polio or smallpox, that's a very good thing. You want to get a vaccination against pneumonia and shingles. At my age, it's important to keep those vaccinations up. But you cannot get that protection, you cannot get that vaccination, that immunity, without a painful shot. I remember last time I was at Walmart pharmacy, I had a pneumonia vaccination, the second of a series of 2. And they said, we don't have a record of shingles. You want shingles? I said, yeah, give me shingles. Little did I know how painful. The pneumonia was nothing, but shingles put me down for almost 48 hours. That shingles vaccinations is worse. And yet the end result is something good. So similarly, Krishna, when he sends an enemy, when he sends someone who's not going to like you no matter what, he's sending that person into your life for your own good. The pain of inoculation is worth the immunity that you get. Simply, we have to see others, we have to see challenges, we have to see backstabbers, we have to see critics as being sent from Krishna for our purification. Now, this is karma. But from a devotee's point of view, we don't see enemies intersecting with our lives as karma. We see it as dharma. The difference between seeing everything as karma and seeing everything as dharma is that devotees do not let the other person's actions govern our lives. No matter how much Duryodhana tried to provoke or irk or get a rise of the Pandavas, they stuck to the path of virtue. They always took the high road. They always tried to do good to Duryodhana until Duryodhana left them with no choice. They never sunk down to the level of their enemies. So if you're in the meshes of karma, you'll see that person as your enemy. You'll see that person as the cause of your troubles, and you will try to get even with that person. You will try to show that person that they're wrong, they're misguided, or that they've come up against the wrong person, that you'll put them down just as they have put you down. That means that you're entangled in the law of karma. And you're binding yourself more stringently to them. They're already in a negative state of mind. Their lives are a mess. They're trying to drag their mess into your life, and you're agreeing to that. You're agreeing to get implicated in their karma. To see things from a dharmic point of view means this is a challenge. This is a test. If I keep a smile on my face, keep doing the right thing, even when people are doing the wrong things to me, I will pass the test. I will come out the other side of this challenge twice as well. Krishna doesn't send things to me for my harm. He sends them to me for my good. That is the dharmic perspective. The karmic perspective is, why doesn't this person like me? What can I do to get out from under their thumb? How can I get even? The dharmic perspective is not to focus on the wrongdoer, not to focus on the immediate cause, but the ultimate doer. Not the wrongdoer, but the ultimate doer. How can I serve Krishna in this situation? Sometimes we serve with others. Sometimes we serve under others. Sometimes we serve others, and sometimes we serve in spite of others. Some people, Krishna send them into our lives, and because of their very harshness, because of their very implacable hate, that person kicks us towards Krishna. We'll leave you with that thought today, Motivational Monday. Let me look over here to our Facebook sidebar and see. Thank you, Jean, the first one to jump on board. It's followed in quick order by Govinda Dave, and then Brent successively by Bobby Christine Warden, and Dibya Joshi, kind of a small group today. But, the post will be there. We'll also transfer them onto YouTube. Most of our YouTube videos get a few dozen at least views in due course of time. And the more time that passes, the more people discover them and access the wisdom which is available there. And I'm certainly humbled and grateful for the opportunity to be a conduit to pass on all these great truths, this great wisdom from great saints and sages, from the pages of the Srimad Bhagavatam, through myself to your doorstep, wherever you may be on this Motivational Monday. We'll end here, and we'll be back with more on the pastimes of Gajendra on Transcendental Tuesday. In the meantime, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.